Stop scrolling. If you have a 50-cent coin sitting in your change, don't spend it yet. I'm holding 4 Australian 50-cent coins, and I've exposed only the 4 special coins in this video that collectors need to see. One small detail could completely change what you're holding. Check your pocket, wallet, and coin jar right now. And if you have one of these coins, collectors, hurry up and contact me, because the right coin could be the hidden treasure you've been overlooking. Stay with me, because the final coin is the one I absolutely would not spend. Coin number 1. Imagine finding a 50-cent coin in your change and almost throwing it straight back into your wallet. Now stop, because this 1977 Australian 50-cent coin is tied to the Silver Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II, and there are details collectors look for before deciding whether an old commemorative coin deserves serious attention. Do not spend this coin until you know exactly what you have. Stay with me, because this one has a story most people completely overlook. There's something about a coin celebrating a royal milestone that makes collectors pause. In 1977, Australia marked the 25th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's accession to the throne. The event became known as the Silver Jubilee, and Australia issued commemorative coins to mark it. So when you hold this 50-cent piece, you're holding a small piece of Australia's 1977 commemorative history, not simply an old coin that happened to survive in someone's change. Look closely at the obverse first. You'll see the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II facing right with the inscriptions Elizabeth II and Australia, together with the denomination and date details associated with the issue. The portrait identifies the monarch, whose 25 years on the throne were being celebrated. Turn the coin over, and the commemorative reverse gives you the design connected to the Silver Jubilee of 1977. That special purpose is exactly what separates this coin from an ordinary 50-cent piece. And here's where you need to slow down. The Australian 50-cent denomination has had several different designs and compositions over the decades. The standard 1977 commemorative 50-cent pieces were struck in cupro-nickel, giving the coin its distinctive pale silver appearance without being solid silver. The standard specification for the Australian 50-cent coin is approximately 15.55 grams, with a diameter of about 31.51 millimeters. Its multi-sided shape is also immediately recognizable. That physical identity matters when you're checking an example that may have been sitting untouched for decades. Now imagine where this coin could have traveled. It was released during a year when Australia was celebrating a major royal anniversary. It could have been placed into a collection, spent at a shop, passed between families, or forgotten inside an old drawer. Some disappeared into private collections while others continued circulating. And that is why condition matters so much today. Every scratch, heavy contact mark, damaged edge, or harsh cleaning attempt can change how collectors view the coin. Your example is described as fine condition, so don't expect a flawless museum piece. Instead, look at what remains. Study the Queen's portrait. Check the lettering. Inspect the reverse design and the outer edge. Look for unusual marks that appear to have been created during striking rather than damage that happened decades later. A tiny die characteristic can attract attention, while a random scratch usually doesn't. Most people miss this difference. And then there is the surface. If your coin has natural aging, mild toning, darkened areas, or the kind of original surface that comes from decades of storage, don't rush to make it look new. Never clean the coin. Don't use polish, chemicals, abrasive cloths, or home remedies. Original toning matters because once you alter the surface, you may permanently remove the very evidence that helps determine its originality and condition. Here's the collector mindset. Don't ask only, is this coin old? Ask, what makes this particular example interesting? Check the date, confirm the commemorative design, inspect the portrait and reverse, examine the edge, and compare the coin's weight and dimensions with the expected specifications. If something looks unusual, photograph it before touching the surface any further. Now let's talk about rarity, because this is where online coin videos can become misleading. A commemorative coin can be historically interesting without every example being automatically rare. Large numbers of Australian commemorative coins were produced, and the value of an individual example depends heavily on condition, authenticity, varieties, errors, demand, and documented market results. So don't assume that every 1,977 50-cent piece is automatically worth thousands. But your supplied auction figure for this example is $16,000. That is a dramatic headline number, and it should be treated as a claimed market figure rather than a guaranteed value for every 1,977 Silver Jubilee 50-cent coin. An ordinary circulated example should be independently assessed before anyone makes a major valuation claim. That's exactly why professional authentication and grading can matter when a coin appears unusually valuable. Still, think about what happens when collectors encounter a genuinely exceptional commemorative coin. The atmosphere changes. One collector wants it. Another collector notices the same feature. A third bidder decides they don't want to lose it. Suddenly, a coin that looked ordinary becomes the center of an aggressive auction battle. That's the emotional side of collecting. Scarcity plus demand creates competition. And collectors don't always sell the coins they love. Some hold them for years. Some build complete commemorative sets. Others specifically search for unusually preserved examples because finding another one in comparable condition may take time. When desirable pieces disappear into collections, the available supply can become tighter, even though the original mintage may have been substantial. So if you're holding this 1,977 50-cent piece, don't judge it by the first glance. The Silver Jubilee connection, the commemorative design, the physical characteristics, the condition, and any legitimate variety or striking characteristic all deserve attention. That combination is what can turn an everyday-looking coin into a serious collector piece. And remember the biggest mistake people make. They see an old coin, clean it until it shines, and then proudly take it to someone expecting a fortune. Don't do that. Do not spend this coin and do not clean it. Preserve it exactly as you found it. Patience can protect more value than rushing ever will. If your coin genuinely appears unusual or potentially valuable, professional grading is critical. A recognized grading service can authenticate the coin, evaluate its condition, and provide an independent assessment. That's far safer than relying on a random online claim or assuming the highest number you see is what your coin is worth. Now look at it one more time. A 1977 Australian 50-cent commemorative isn't just a piece of change. It connects you to a major royal milestone, an important year in Australia's modern history, and a collecting world where tiny differences can matter enormously. This is why you should never automatically throw an old commemorative coin back into circulation, because the real hidden treasure isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's sitting quietly in your hand while everyone else walks straight past it. And if you think this coin was interesting, wait until you see what comes next. The next coin has another date, another story, and another detail that could make collectors stop scrolling instantly. Stay with me because the next discovery is even harder to ignore. Next up, coin number 2. If you've got a 2004 Australian 50-cent coin hiding in your change, don't throw it back into circulation just yet. This one carries a design that was born from a national student competition, and the tiny details are exactly what make collectors stop and look twice. Do not spend this coin until you've checked what's actually in your hand. Stay with me, because this ordinary-looking piece can tell a much bigger story than most people realize. What makes this coin instantly interesting is the reverse. Instead of a traditional coat of arms or a simple commemorative emblem, you get 3 unmistakably Australian animals together: a wombat, a lorikeet, and a koala. And this wasn't simply another design chosen behind closed doors. The artwork came from John Serrano, a Year 5 divided by 6 student at St. Peter's Primary School in East Keilor, Victoria, whose design won the Royal Australian Mint's National Student Competition. More than 2,500 entries were received, making the story behind this coin genuinely unusual. Now look carefully at the animals. The wombat anchors the scene. The lorikeet brings movement and character, while the koala appears climbing through the composition. It isn't the kind of design you forget after seeing it once. On the reverse, you'll also find the denomination 50, along with the initials JS, representing John Serrano. Those 2 letters are tiny, but they are part of what makes this coin instantly recognizable to collectors of the issue. Flip the coin over, and the story changes completely. The obverse carries the 4th portrait of Queen Elizabeth II facing right, wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. Around her are the words Elizabeth II Australia and the date 2004, with IRB identifying the portrait designer, Ian Rank Broadley. So you've got British royal history on one side and an unmistakably Australian student-created fauna design on the other. That contrast is a huge part of this coin's appeal. And here's something most casual owners don't realize. The design was important enough that the Royal Australian Mint actually put it into general circulation. The Mint records around 10.2 million of the student design 50-cent coins issued for circulation, while its own 2004-5 production report records 10,577 million student design pieces in cupro nickel. So we're not talking about a coin that was secretly struck in a tiny batch for a handful of collectors. It was made to be seen, used, and circulated. That makes your poor condition example especially interesting from a storytelling perspective. Think about what could have happened to it. A child could have received it as change. Someone could have dropped it into a vending machine. It could have traveled through shops, pockets, and tills for years. Every transaction added another tiny chapter to its story. And now, after all that movement, it's still carrying the original animals and the original date. Now feel the coin. The standard circulating version is 75% copper and 25% nickel, with a mass of about 15.55 grams, a diameter of roughly 31.51 millimeters, and a thickness around 3 millimeters. It's a large 12-sided coin with a smooth edge. That distinctive dodecagonal shape is one of the easiest ways to recognize an Australian 50-cent piece, even before you read the date. And don't confuse this circulating cupro nickel version with the separate silver proof. The Royal Australian Mint also produced a 99.9% fine silver proof version weighing 18.24 grams, with a limited mintage of 12,500. That's a completely different collector product. Your circulating 2004 student design coin is the cupro nickel issue, so the composition, weight, and market expectations are different. Now check those brown, black, or dark spots on your example. This is where people get impatient. They see an old-looking surface and immediately want to make it shine. Don't. Never clean the coin. Don't polish it, scrub it, scratch it, or put chemicals on the surface. Cleaning can leave hairlines and unnatural surfaces that may hurt collector appeal. Original toning and original surfaces are evidence of the coin's history, so preserve what you've got. Instead, inspect it under good light. Look at the Queen's portrait. Check the lettering around the rim. Then, turn it over and study every animal. Look especially at the JS initials, the number 50, the edges of the design, and any unusual marks that appear raised or repeated. A genuine mint-made characteristic is one thing. A random scratch from decades of circulation is something completely different. And here's the important collector mindset. Don't mistake damage for rarity. Your poor condition is part of the coin's current state, but it doesn't automatically make the piece rare. The 2004 circulating issue had millions struck, and modern reference sources generally treat ordinary examples as readily available. So the big opportunity isn't simply finding the date. It's identifying something genuinely unusual, such as an authenticated error, variety, exceptional preservation, or another characteristic that the normal examples don't have. That distinction matters because you've given this coin a claimed auction value of $15,200. Treat that figure as a claimed value, not a guaranteed price for an ordinary poor condition 2,450-cent coin. Current catalog references put ordinary examples far below that level. A high headline number should only be believed when supported by a specific, documented sale of a comparable coin. But imagine the auction scenario if someone actually brings a spectacular, authenticated example with a legitimate special feature. That's when collectors start paying attention. One bidder wants it for the collection. Another doesn't want to lose the opportunity. The bidding climbs. The room gets quieter. That's the collector obsession you want to understand. The emotional appeal is obvious. This coin isn't just metal. It's a tiny piece of Australian culture created by a school student and transformed into an actual circulating coin. John Serrano's winning concept was inspired by 3 animals recognized as Australian bush characters, and his initials were deliberately incorporated into the design. That's an incredible backstory for something that could have been sitting unnoticed in your pocket. So here's what you should do if you find one. First, confirm 2004 the second. Make sure the reverse has the koala, lorikeet, and wombat. Third, locate the JS initials. Fourth, check the Queen's portrait and IRB marking. Then, weigh it and measure it without damaging the coin. If something doesn't match the normal specifications, or you notice a genuine-looking minting anomaly, don't rush to sell it. And please remember, patience creates wealth. Panic destroys opportunities. Don't clean it because you think buyers will prefer shiny metal. Don't spend it because someone tells you it's only 50 cents. But also, don't assume a random dark spot means you've discovered a fortune. The smart move is verification. If the coin appears genuinely exceptional, professional grading is critical. An experienced numismatist or recognized grading service can determine whether you're looking at an ordinary circulated coin or something deserving much closer attention. Now take another look at those 3 animals. A wombat, a lorikeet, a koala. They came from a 12-year-old student's winning design and ended up on millions of Australian 50-cent pieces. Today, most people see 50 cents. A collector sees a story, a design, a date, a condition grade, and the possibility of something unusual hiding in the details. That's why you should not spend this coin before checking it. The hidden treasure isn't necessarily the face value. It's the possibility that you found an example with something the ordinary pieces don't have. And if you think this 2004 Australian Fauna 50 cent is interesting, don't go anywhere. The next coin takes this hunt in a completely different direction, and the detail hiding on that one could make an ordinary-looking coin even harder to ignore. Next up, coin number 3. There's one important accuracy point before the script. The standard circulating 2008 Australian 50 cent coin is a copper-nickel dodecagonal coin, weighing 15.55 grams and measuring 31.65 millimeters across the flats. The Royal Australian Mint lists 33.0 million 2008 standard 50 cent coins struck, so I'll keep the script dramatic while avoiding claiming that an ordinary circulated example is automatically worth. Imagine finding this coin in your change and almost tossing it back into the cash register. That could be the mistake that costs you a serious opportunity. The 2008 Australian 50 cent coin looks ordinary, but collectors know that tiny details, condition, varieties, and unusual examples can completely change the story. You're looking at a coin that millions of people may have handled without ever asking one question: what exactly am I holding? The first thing I want you to notice is the size and shape. This is not a tiny 50 cent piece you can overlook. It has that unmistakable 12-sided shape, designed specifically to make the denomination easier to recognize. The standard coin is 15.55 grams with a diameter of about 31.65 millimeters across the flats. Its thickness is roughly 2.5 millimeters, giving it a surprisingly substantial feel in your hand. That physical presence is part of what makes Australian 50 cent coins so fascinating. Turn it over, and the familiar Commonwealth design appears. On the obverse is the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II with the surrounding inscription, Elizabeth II, Australia, 2008. The portrait was designed by Ian Rank Broadley, and every tiny part of that effigy becomes important when collectors inspect a coin closely. They look at the lettering, rim, portrait details, and surfaces, searching for anything unusual that separates an ordinary coin from something genuinely collectible. Now flip it again. The reverse carries the Australian Commonwealth coat of arms, with the kangaroo and emu standing on either side of the shield. Around the design is the denomination 50 cents. The reverse design is associated with Stuart Devlin, the legendary designer whose work appears across Australian decimal coinage. This is where the coin suddenly feels less like loose change and more like a little piece of Australian history sitting in your palm. But here is where most people make the mistake. They see a 2008 date and assume there is nothing worth checking. The Royal Australian Mint records about 33 million standard 2008 50 cent coins struck, meaning this is not a date where every ordinary example is automatically rare. That makes the hunt even more interesting, because the real question is not simply, do I have a 2008? It is, do I have something different about my 2008? And that difference could begin with the surface. Your example has green spots and circulated wear. Don't immediately assume those marks are valuable. Green discoloration can sometimes be contamination or corrosion rather than desirable natural toning. Collectors want to know what created the color, whether the surface remains original, and whether the coin has been damaged. Never clean the coin. Scrubbing, polishing, chemicals, or aggressive rubbing can permanently destroy the original surface and make an otherwise interesting coin far less desirable. The metal itself gives us another clue. The standard circulating 50 cent coin is made from 75% copper and 25% nickel. It is non-magnetic, and its 12-sided blank is produced specifically for this denomination. During production, metal blanks are prepared and struck between dies under enormous pressure, transferring the design into the coin. That process is incredibly precise, which is why genuine striking abnormalities and unusual varieties can become so fascinating to collectors. So take your time with this one. Start with the date, 2008, then inspect the portrait and lettering under good light. Move around the rim. Look at the coat of arms, the kangaroo, the emu, and the shield. Check whether the details are sharp or unusually distorted. Look for genuine doubling, unusual die characteristics, missing details, or other anomalies, but don't convince yourself that every scratch or stain is an error. Most people miss this distinction, and it can save you from believing a damaged coin is automatically a rare one. Now think about the journey this coin may have taken. It entered circulation in Australia, passed through shops, tills, pockets, and wallets, and was exposed to thousands of hands. Every transaction added another opportunity for scratches, dents, and surface wear. After nearly 2 decades, a circulated coin can look completely ordinary. That's exactly why patience matters. Sometimes the most interesting discovery isn't sitting inside a collector's display case. It's sitting unnoticed in a jar, drawer, or handful of change. And condition changes the entire conversation. A sharply preserved example with strong original detail is far more attractive to collectors than one that has been heavily damaged. Your black or green spotting does not automatically increase value. In fact, if the surface is corrosion, cleaning, or environmental damage, it can hurt desirability. Original toning matters, but artificial staining is a completely different story. That's why professional evaluation becomes important before you make any decision. This is also why I would never tell you to rush this coin into a sale based on a headline number. If you genuinely believe you have an unusual 2008 50-cent piece, preserve it exactly as found, photograph both sides, record its weight accurately, and compare the physical characteristics with reliable references. Professional grading is critical if there is a serious possibility of a valuable variety or exceptional specimen. A professional opinion can separate an exciting discovery from ordinary circulation damage. Now let's talk about the number you were expecting. A claimed auction value of $22,100 for an ordinary circulated 2008 50-cent coin should not be treated as a guaranteed market price. Current reference material places ordinary 2008 examples dramatically lower, while specific varieties or exceptional collector pieces can command different prices. So the real hidden treasure is the possibility that your coin contains a feature most people overlook, not the assumption that every 2008 coin is automatically worth thousands. And that's exactly what makes collectors obsessed. They aren't simply buying metal. They're chasing the story, the variety, the condition, the unusual strike, and that tiny detail nobody else noticed. When a genuinely scarce example appears, serious buyers can become extremely competitive. Collectors may hold desirable pieces rather than sell them, shrinking the available supply while interest continues to grow. That's when a 50-cent coin can suddenly become much more interesting than its face value suggests. So if you have a 2008 Australian 50-cent coin, don't throw it back into circulation without looking. Check the date, inspect the Queen's portrait, study the lettering, examine the coat of arms, and carefully inspect every surface. Don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't scratch it, trying to test it. And above all, do not spend this coin until you know exactly what you're holding. This is not about believing every sensational price you hear online. It's about learning to stop for 5 seconds when everyone else keeps walking. Because sometimes the person who notices one tiny difference is the person who discovers something everybody else ignored. Your 50-cent coin may be ordinary, or it may have a story worth investigating. And the next coin? That's where things get even more serious, because its rarity could make this 2008 piece look like the easy one. Next up, coin number 4. Before you scroll past this one, take a second look at that 50-cent piece. The 1982 Australian 50 cent, commemorating the 12 Commonwealth Games in Brisbane, has a story built into every side, and if you find one in your change, you might be holding something far more interesting than ordinary spending money. But there's a catch. The truly exciting discoveries come from condition, unusual varieties, genuine errors, and exceptional specimens, not simply the date. The first thing that makes this coin impossible to confuse with an ordinary 50-cent piece is the design. It was created to celebrate the Brisbane 12th Commonwealth Games, an enormous sporting event that brought athletes from across the Commonwealth to Queensland. In 1982, the Royal Australian Mint confirms that the circulating commemorative issue was struck in Canberra, with roughly 49.6 million produced for circulation. So this isn't a coin where every surviving example is automatically rare, but that doesn't mean you should ignore it. Now imagine the moment this coin entered circulation. Australia was moving through the early 1980, and Brisbane was preparing to take the international spotlight. The Commonwealth Games transformed the city into the centre of a huge sporting celebration. This little piece of metal became part of that moment. It could have passed through a Brisbane shop, a Queensland wallet, a bank counter, or someone's pocket, and decades later, it could still be sitting unnoticed in a collection or change jar. Turn the coin over and look closely at the obverse. You get the young right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, wearing her tiara. Around her portrait is the inscription, Elizabeth II, Australia, 1982. The portrait was designed by Arnold Machine, and those letters are not decoration you should ignore. Collectors examine the lettering, rim, portrait, and fields for unusual characteristics because tiny differences can be far more important than the date itself. But the reverse is where this coin becomes a miniature piece of Australian sporting history. In the centre is the Commonwealth Games symbol over a map of Australia, with Brisbane marked by a star. Around the central design are sporting figures representing the 12 sports featured in the Games. You'll find representations of sports including swimming, boxing, cycling, gymnastics, archery, volleyball, wrestling, weightlifting, lawn bowls, and shooting. Around everything is the legend 12 Commonwealth Games, Brisbane 50 cents. And here's where you need to slow down. Don't just look at the coin from across the room. Put it under strong light and rotate it slowly. Look at the rim. Study the Central Games symbol. Examine the lettering. Check the sports figures. Look around the map and the star marking Brisbane. Then flip it over and inspect the Queen's portrait. This detail changes everything when you're trying to determine whether a coin is simply an ordinary commemorative issue or something genuinely unusual. The physical specifications are another clue that helps you identify the correct coin. This 1982 50 cent is a 12-sided cupro-nickel coin made from approximately 75% copper and 25% nickel. It weighs about 15.55 grams and measures roughly 31.5 millimeters across the flats. Its edge is smooth rather than reeded, and references place its thickness at around 2.5 to 3 millimeters, depending on measurement method. That weight matters. If you believe you've found an unusual specimen, don't rely on your fingers alone. Put the coin on an accurate digital scale and record the result. Then measure it carefully. A major difference from the expected specifications could be a reason to investigate further, but it isn't automatically proof of an error. A damaged, bent, worn, or contaminated coin can also produce misleading measurements. Now let's talk about the surface of your coin. You said this example is in fine condition. That means it has experienced circulation and normal contact over the years. You may see small marks, surface wear, and softened design details. And that's exactly why you should never attack it with a cloth, polish, or chemical cleaner. Do not clean this coin. Seriously, don't try to make an old coin look new. Original surfaces can be important to collectors, and harsh cleaning can leave permanent hairlines, unnatural brightness, and surface damage. If your coin has attractive natural toning, preserve it. If it has dark patches, grime, or discoloration, don't automatically assume those marks make it valuable. Some surface changes are simply environmental damage. The production process also gives us something fascinating to think about. Every circulating coin had to be struck with tremendous pressure between dies. The blank had to be correctly prepared, positioned, and struck so the intricate Commonwealth Games imagery could transfer properly. With large production runs, dies experience wear and coins can show characteristics related to the striking process. Most of those characteristics aren't valuable errors. But genuine varieties and major minting mistakes are exactly the kinds of details that serious collectors investigate. And there is one feature you should understand immediately. This coin has no traditional mint mark identifying Canberra on the face of the coin. That's normal. Don't mistake the absence of a mint mark for an error. The Royal Australian Mint produced the issue in Canberra, but the standard circulating design doesn't require a visible C or similar mint letter. This is where many online coin stories go wrong. Someone finds an old-looking 50-cent coin, sees a huge number attached to a similar example online, and assumes their coin must be worth the same amount. That's dangerous. A headline price doesn't automatically transfer to every coin of the same year. The market separates ordinary circulated pieces from high-grade, proof, specimen, error, and genuinely scarce varieties. And the 1,982 games 50 cent is a perfect example. Current collecting references show ordinary certified examples generally selling for only a few Australian dollars depending on grade, while exceptional proof grades can command more. NGC's guide similarly lists relatively modest values for normal graded examples. So if you've heard someone claim that an ordinary circulated 1,982 games 50 cent is automatically worth $25,000, stop before believing it. That kind of price would require extraordinary evidence, such as a rare recognized variety, major minting error, exceptional specimen, or a documented sale that actually supports the figure. For a normal fine-condition circulation coin, the evidence does not support treating $25,000 as a guaranteed value. But don't misunderstand me. That doesn't make the coin boring. Far from it. Collectors love these pieces because they combine Australian history, sport design, and circulating coinage in one object. The game's design is dramatically different from the standard Commonwealth coat of arms reverse, and that instantly gives the coin character. Someone can hold it today and still see the sporting event Australia hosted more than 4 decades ago. And then there's the psychology of collecting. Imagine finding one in an old family tin. You turn it over. You see 1982. You recognize the Commonwealth Games design. You notice the surface is unusually well preserved. You check the weight. You examine the edge. Then you discover something unusual about the strike that isn't present on normal examples. That's the moment the hunt changes. Because collectors aren't just buying 50 cents. They're buying scarcity, condition, history, and the possibility that they discovered something before everyone else did. And when a genuinely rare error appears, the behavior can change fast. Buyers who know exactly what they're looking for may become aggressive. A coin that initially looks like pocket change can suddenly attract serious attention. The available supply of a specific unusual variety can be tiny even when millions of normal coins were produced. That's why patience matters. If you find one, don't rush to clean it, spend it, or throw it into a mixed pile. Separate it. Photograph both sides. Record the weight. Check the diameter. Inspect the edge. Compare the design against reliable references. If something genuinely unusual appears, get an expert opinion. Professional grading is critical when you're dealing with a potentially valuable specimen. A professional can help determine whether a feature is an actual minting error, post-mint damage, environmental staining, or simply normal circulation wear. And here's the collector tip I want you to remember. Don't chase the biggest number first. Chase the evidence first. Find out what you actually have. Then determine whether the market has a reason to pay a premium for it. Because the real hidden treasure isn't believing every sensational claim you see online. The real treasure is developing the eye to spot the one coin that deserves a second look. So if you're holding an Australian 50-cent coin from 1982, take another look before you spend it. Check the game symbol. Check the map. Check the Brisbane Star. Study every sports figure. Inspect the lettering. Turn it over and examine the Queen's portrait and rim. Check the weight and dimensions. Look for genuine minting abnormalities, but don't confuse scratches, dents, corrosion, or cleaning damage with rare errors. And remember, do not spend this coin until you've checked it properly. This is not necessarily a $25,000 coin just because someone puts that number beside the year, but it is a fascinating Australian commemorative that can become much more interesting when exceptional condition, proof quality, or a genuine error enters the story. The ordinary coin may be affordable. The extraordinary one is where collectors start paying attention. So keep your eyes open. Your next 50-cent discovery could be sitting in a place you would never expect. A drawer, an old collection, a forgotten jar, or even your change after buying something completely ordinary. And if you think this 1982 Commonwealth Games coin was interesting, don't walk away yet. The next discovery is even more dangerous to ignore. Because when the right Australian commemorative meets the right rarity, the tiny details can suddenly become the entire story.